scripture reading, and the scripture reading comes from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 1, verses 11 to 15. And the Word of God says, "Then an angel of the Lord appeared to him, standing at the right side of the altar of incense. When Zacharias saw him, he was amazed and was terrified with fear. But the angel said to him, 'Do not be afraid, Zachariah. Your prayer has been heard. Your wife Elizabeth will bear you a son, and you are to call him John. He will be a joy and delight to you, and many will rejoice because of his birth. For he will be a great man in the sight of the Lord.'" May God bless the reading of his word.
Amen. Thank you, Ellie. Beautiful reading. I'll tell you though, when I start, somebody asked me, tell me the beginning of the Christmas story. Where does it start? I'm always tempted to point to the second chapter of Luke, and not the first chapter, because I just love that part. It does sound like the beginning. A decree went out from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be enrolled. And so Joseph went down out of Galilee in the city of Nazareth unto Judea, into the city of David, which is called Bethlehem, to be registered with Mary, his wife, who was with child. Sounds like the beginning of the story. But of course, in Luke, this is chapter 2. There is a whole beginning to the Christmas story that starts as, kind of our Christmases today. They don't start on Christmas Day. They start weeks and weeks before Christmas as we're getting prepared. Well, the Christmas story starts more than a year before Christmas. So we hear a little bit about it. It's not even about Mary and Joseph. It's about Mary's cousin Elizabeth and her husband Zechariah. It's an amazing story, and I'm going to shorten this first chapter of Luke down. But basically, Zechariah was a priest, and he was working in the temple when an angel of the Lord appeared to him, as we heard today. He said, "You will have a son, you will call him John, and he will be a great man." Or specifically, he will be a great man in the sight of the Lord. And then, of course, this comes to pass. And 3 months before he's born, the same angel, Gabriel, comes to Mary and says, "Hail Mary, you are highly favored. You are greatly blessed by God. For you will have a son, and you will name him Jesus." And Mary said, "Well, how is this so? How can this be? I'm not married." And the angel says to her, "With God, all things are possible." Only when all of these things happen, and actually quite a few more that I've skipped over here in the first chapter, then do we get to that decree from Caesar Augustus that all the world should be taxed. And then the story of Christmas Day really begins. But we need to get through this, that the true beginning, and these announcements by the angels that these wonderful children can be born. And one thing we can take from this, and let me suggest to you that part of your Advent, getting ready for Christmas, should be reading this first chapter of Luke. It's a very beautiful chapter to read. It has a lot of great things in it. It's very inspirational, very uplifting. But let me tell you 2 little things, actually just 2 words from this whole chapter I want to pull out and to look at them because, it looks like God is defining these words differently than we define them. And this happens quite a bit. God will use a word, but use it differently than we do. And this happens in Scripture. It happens with Jesus a lot. Jesus will use words very differently from the way we would use them. It happens in the Old Testament and in the New Testament. And we should be used to that because it happens all the time with us too. We say things to each other and we get into trouble because we misunderstand. We have different definitions of particular words. For instance, when someone tells their boss, "I'm going to be a little late for work." Now, that person may have one definition of what it means to be a little late for work, and the boss may have a completely different definition for what that means. You've got to be specific about these things. You can't, because it's so easy to misinterpret, to get on the wrong page. And this certainly happens with our kids. I know, being the parent of 2 teenagers, you go into, the father goes into a teenager's room and says, "You know what? You need to clean this room." And the teenager looks at you, Standing there in the middle of it, the teenager looks at you with all sincerity and says, "But my room is clean." It's not that the teenager's lying to you. You're standing there, you're seeing the same room. It's just you have two different definitions for what clean means. And so we see this throughout the Bible. And I want you to be very aware of this, especially as you read different stories in the Bible, as you think about the passages that you love best from the Bible. Think about the way you define these words, different words in the Bible, and the way God defines those words. Well, let's look at first at the story of Mary that I talked to the kids about. It's the story of the Annunciation. And the angel came to Mary and said, "Hail, you are highly favored. Mary, you are blessed among all women." You think, wow, that's something. We can read over that and say, yeah, sure, of course. Because, she's Jesus' mother. She's the mother of Christ. She's blessed. But then we start thinking really about her life and the way we define blessed, the way we think of it today, and we look at our life and think, well, you know what? Is that so? Would our definition of being blessed apply to Mary? I mean, look at what we know about her life. Look at some of the circumstances, and think maybe about some young person you know. And the life that, if you were thinking, I want this young person to live a blessed life, what that would mean to you today. What does that mean to us? What would it mean to our society? Let's think, for instance, we don't know specifics about Mary's wedding. But we do know that back then, just like today, everybody wanted weddings to be happy. Be happy affairs, have a big party. And Jesus would talk about that. These great wedding parties that would be had that would last for days, and people would have a great time. In fact, Jesus' first miracle was turning water into wine for a wedding feast. And so, yes, everybody would want and think that a young person is blessed when their wedding ceremony was a very happy affair. Probably it wasn't so with Mary. For her husband, he didn't really want to marry her. His plan was to let her go quietly. But God spoke through the angel and said, "Joseph, you should marry her." And being obedient and being faithful, Joseph did that. Very good for Joseph, very good for Mary, of course, and Jesus, but probably doesn't make for the happiest wedding of all time when the groom is doing it because God told him to do it. And we can just imagine that wedding, and we can imagine how this wasn't the way Mary's parents and family pictured it. It wasn't the way Joseph and his family pictured it as well. Was Mary blessed? Was she? Well, not according to our definition of young people, the way they should be married, the way their weddings should happen. Well, and what about her being pregnant? She's going to have a baby. Now, if we're thinking of a young person today, thinking that person, would imagine them going to have a baby, what would we want for that person? Well, certainly, I think in our society, in our world, we would want that young woman to be able to have her child surrounded by people who knew what they were doing, right? People who understood what it was to be able, what it is to be able to help a mother to give birth to a child. We would think, probably most of us would think of a hospital. We would want doctors and nurses especially to be around for that moment when the child was born. Now, does Mary, does she have this kind of blessing in her life? Absolutely not. Think about this. The only person around was her husband to help her to have this child. No midwife, no aunt, no cousin, no mother. None of these women were there with her. She was on her own, and not even in a house. She was in a stable, and she didn't even have a crib for her child. She would lay him in a manger. Was she blessed? By our definition of being blessed. And what about her marriage? We would always hope, I think, for anyone that when they were to get married, that we would want that marriage to last a long time so that person would be safe and secure and those two people can help each other. But as far as we know, many scholars think that Joseph, her husband, died soon after when Jesus was still a child. And so there she was on her own. Was she blessed? Not necessarily by our definition of what it is to be blessed in marriage. And then we think of young people and say, well, we want them to have families that are going to be a support to them, that are going to bring them a lot of joy in life. We don't want them to have a lot of trouble, a lot of tragedy. And there's Mary, and she's standing at the cross watching her first child be crucified. Is that a blessed life? not according to our definition. We suddenly realize we're not talking about our definition. That God has a very different definition of what it is to be blessed. Now, we can find somebody in the story of Jesus' birth that is blessed, that has all of our expectations. When we think, oh, that person sure is blessed, this person fits that category, and that's Herod, the king, the villain of the story. He's got all the things. He's got wealth, he's got security, he's got comfort. He doesn't have to worry. He's got the best medical care that money can buy at that time. All of these things that we think are so necessary and required for great blessing, he had. But no, according to Scripture, it is not Herod that is blessed. It's Mary. Mary is the one who is blessed. So we look at her life and we see, then what does this mean? If it's not our old definition of, boy, how many times, I've said this before myself. How many times have you heard somebody in a family, or maybe said it yourself, we are so blessed we haven't had any tragedy, great tragedy in our family. Yeah, that's the way we think. By our definition, we are blessed when that doesn't happen. But you know, it doesn't apply at all to Mary. For she had great tragedy during her life. So what is it? What is it about Mary's life that is a blessing and makes her blessed? Well, certainly she was blessed with some great attributes. She had faith. And a deep faith. You want to read about a deep faith and read about her faith? Read that chapter 1 of Luke, and you'll read about this faith that Mary kept with her, the way it comforted her, and it strengthened her, and it did, again, through the good times and through the bad. Again, she's going to have bad times, but she's going to remain blessed because she's going to carry that faith with her through those bad times. She had faith. Because of that, she had humility. She had obedience. And all of these things she would use in her life in order to bring God's purpose, God's plan of salvation into effect. And she would play an absolutely crucial role in that. So is that what it means to be blessed? As we think of our lives and think, I want to be a blessed person. I want my family to be blessed. I want my marriage to be blessed. I want my job to be blessed. We need to think, now wait, are we using our definition of those things, or are we using God's definition? God has some unusual definitions, and certainly the definition of being and what it means to be blessed, that's something that we learn as we read about Mary, the true beginning of the Christmas story. And you know, there's another definition too. So blessed is one that our definition may be different from God's definition, but there's another, and it was in our scripture reading today, and about John the Baptist. And you know, the angel saying to Zechariah, you're going to have a son, you're going to name him John, and he is going to be a great man in the sight of the Lord. John is going to be a great man in the sight of the Lord. And we say, yeah, John the Baptist, we're still talking about him, he's a great man, but not really by our definition, though. When we start saying about what is a great man, what is a great person in this world, we say, well, you know, we can probably think we can pick them out, right? Pick them out of the lineup, because a great person, you know, they're going to be dressed sharp. And they're going to own all the right things, and they're going to know what accessories to wear as well. And yeah, they're going to have the right house and belong to the right club and have all the right achievements and all the right degrees. And that's the way we determine whether a person is great. And then we say, well, wait, what about John the Baptist? He was great in the sight of the Lord, and he wore animal skins, and he ate locusts, and he ate honey, and he lived way out in the wilderness. Yeah, he doesn't seem to fit our definition of what it means to be great. You might also say, well, somebody who is great, you know, they've risen up to the top of their profession. Someone who's great, and she is well known for what she does. She does it well. She's always on that list of the very best people in her profession. We think, oh yeah, John was kind of top of his profession, wasn't he? People were coming down to see him. People were being baptized by him. He was doing real well there for a while, but then once Jesus came along, his job was kind of done. A lot of his disciples left to follow Jesus. A lot of the crowds that were following him were going over to Jesus instead. You know, John would end his life without having this incredible popularity. In fact, all he had left was the king hating him. And that's how he ended, you know. John did not end as a great person with great honors and, you know, awards up on his wall and all of these things we associate with being great. Some office that he has been elected to. Some important job he has been appointed to. No, he ended his life in a prison cell, in the dungeon of the king. And he had his head cut off. What does it mean to be great then? This is a great man, this man who died in prison, who was executed by his government. But he was great. You notice it was very particular. The angel said he wasn't great in the sight of humanity. He wasn't great in the sight of people. He was great in the sight of God. Why was that? Well, it's the same as for Mary. You know, this unusual definition of greatness. The idea of doing and using your gifts and your talents this week, in these days ahead, your special gifts that you have been given to do God's will in this world, to make this world a little bit more the place that God wants it to be, by serving others, by being kind and loving and generous and helpful and fair and just. All of these things, and using our gifts, our talents. You know, that opens us up then. Because not only here, here are two words, to be great and to be blessed. And they're two words that we seem to use differently than God uses. We have one definition. God has his unusual definition. So maybe we should be thinking about other words as well that are in our dictionary, that we use every day. We have a definition in our dictionary for generosity. Does that definition match God's unusual definition for generosity? We have our definition for what it means to have compassion for other people. Does our definition of compassion match God's unusual definition for compassion? Here's another. It's one Jesus taught about. Our definition of what it means to be a neighbor. What does that mean? What is our definition of neighbor? Does it include just people who are kind of like us, or does it, like with Jesus, include the other as well? What is our definition, and how does it compare to God's definition for neighbor? And then you just make that list as long as you want of the things that are most important in your life. What is God's definition of a good marriage? And how does it compare to your definition? What is God's definition of being a good parent? And how does it compare to your definition? What is God's definition of being a good child? And how does it compare to your definition? This story of the early part of Luke there, that first chapter of Luke, it teaches us the importance of these definitions and how we can live unusually joyful lives, unusually meaningful lives, unusually purposeful lives. When we start living our lives using God's unusual definitions. Let's bow and pray. Loving God, we do ask that you help us to see this world as you see it. Loving God, help us to be able to open our eyes and see with your compassion, see with your love, see with your sense of fairness, to see others as your children, and to try our best to love them the way that you love them. Loving God, we ask for that gift now as we come to this table. Help us to see this meal as more than just a little bread and a tiny bit of juice. Loving God, help us to see it as the feast that it represents. The feast of your love, the feast of this community. And help us to take the nourishment we receive here today into the week ahead, that we may be enabled and ready and strengthened to do your will in this world. It is in Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen.
This is our communion and an offering time, so if you come to the front and receive